pronounced dead, I saw my husband and sister cheating. Revenge shattered their wedding and freedom. 6 months ago, I was Loretta Hayes, a real estate agent with a decent list of clients and a husband I adored, Russell. We had a lovely 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood, the kind with big oak trees and neighbors who waved when you drove by. Life was comfortable, predictable, and I loved it that way. That morning was crisp, the way an early autumn day can be. I was at the kitchen counter, sipping my coffee, when Russell came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. "You're still going on your hike, right?" he asked, his voice unusually bright. "Of course," I said. "It's the perfect day for it." "Clear skies. You should take the Carson Ridge Trail," he suggested, pouring himself a cup. "I heard the view is spectacular after the rain we had yesterday." I remember thinking it was a little strange. Russell wasn't usually that interested in my hiking routes, but I just smiled. "Good idea, honey." An hour later, I was there. The air was clean and smelled of pine and damp earth. I felt a sense of peace as I started up the trail. But as I got higher, I noticed the path was slicker than I'd expected. The rain had turned patches of the trail into slick, reddish mud. I made a mental note to be careful. I reached a scenic overlook, a place where the trail narrowed near a steep drop-off. I stopped to take a breath, looking out at the valley below. That's the last peaceful moment I remember. I turned to continue on the path and my foot just went. It didn't feel like a simple slip. It felt like the ground beneath me gave way, like I was suddenly unbalanced. There was a split second of pure, dizzying confusion, a sense of weightlessness, and then terror. The world became a blur of green and brown as I tumbled over the edge. I don't remember much of the fall itself, just flashes, the sickening crack of a branch breaking my fall for a moment, the sharp, searing pain in my shoulder, the horrifying feeling of hitting the cold, rushing water of the creek below. The impact knocked the wind out of me, and the last thing I remember is the icy water closing over my head, pulling me into the darkness. I don't know how long I was in that water, or how long I lay unconscious on the rocky bank where the current finally spit me out. Days, maybe the next thing I knew, I was waking up to the smell of wood smoke and beef stew. My head was pounding, a deep, throbbing ache that made it impossible to think straight. My entire body felt like one giant bruise. A woman's face came into focus above me. She had kind eyes etched with wrinkles and a gentle smile. "Well, look who's finally decided to join the living," she said, her voice warm and raspy. "Easy now. Don't try to move too fast." Where am I?" I managed to whisper, my throat raw. "You are in my home. My name is Mavis. My husband found you down by the creek a few days back. You were in a real bad way." She gently dabbed my forehead with a cool, damp cloth. "Honey, you're lucky to be alive. The creek must have carried you for miles." I was alive. But as I lay there in that stranger's bed, with no ID, no phone, and a head so scrambled I could barely remember my own name, I had no idea that, in the world I'd left behind, I was already dead and buried. The next few weeks were a blur of pain and confusion. Mavis was a godsend. She nursed me back to health with stews, herbal teas, and a quiet, steady patience that I desperately needed. Her cabin was small and rustic, nestled deep in the woods, miles from the nearest town. It was a safe haven, a quiet place to heal, but it was also a prison of sorts, because I had no way of contacting the outside world. My memory came back in fits and starts. First, my name, Loretta, then Russell, our house, my sister, Delia. The memories were like pieces of a shattered mirror, and I was trying to put them back together. I'd spend hours just staring out the window at the tall pine trees, frustration mounting inside me. My body was healing, but my mind felt broken. I tried to walk one afternoon, and my legs just buckled, sending me crashing to the floor. I just lay there and sobbed, not from the pain, but from the helplessness of it all. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I was strong enough to sit up for more than an hour at a time. My head was clearer. One afternoon, Mavis was dusting an old beige desktop computer in the corner of the living room. "You know, we don't have much in the way of internet out here," she said. "But it works. Slow as molasses in January, but it works. Maybe you could try to find your family." My heart started pounding. Of course, the internet. I felt a surge of hope mixed with a strange kind of dread. What would I find? I sat down at the old desk. The plastic of the keyboard was yellowed with age. I could hear the loud whirring and beeping as the machine connected to the internet. My hands were shaking as I typed my own name into the search bar. Loretta Hayes. The first result was a local news article. The headline hit me like a physical blow. Local realtor Loretta Hayes missing, presumed dead after hiking accident. Presumed dead. The words swam before my eyes. I read the article. My breath caught in my throat. It quoted a devastated Russell who spoke of his unbearable grief. It mentioned a memorial service was being planned. A funeral. They had held a funeral for me. I felt a wave of dizziness, but I kept scrolling. There were pictures of me, articles about the search efforts that had eventually been called off. And then I saw it, an article from a local society blog posted just a few weeks ago. The headline was sickeningly cheerful. A new beginning. Russell Hayes finds love after tragedy. My blood ran cold. I clicked the link, and there it was, a picture of Russell, my husband, smiling. His arm was wrapped around my sister, Delea. She was beaming, her hand held up to show off a glittering diamond ring on her finger. The article was short and sweet. It talked about how they had found solace in each other's arms during their shared grief. It announced their engagement just 3 months after my disappearance. 3 months. I didn't realize I was still holding the ceramic mug of tea Mavis had given me until it slipped from my numb fingers. It hit the wooden floor and shattered, the sound echoing the complete and utter destruction of my world. Mavis rushed in. "Loretta, honey, what is it?" I couldn't speak. I just pointed a trembling finger at the screen. She leaned over my shoulder, her eyes scanning the article. I heard her sharp intake of breath. "Oh my Lord," she whispered. "That's just not right." Not right? It was a monstrous betrayal. As Mavis helped me clean up the broken pieces of the mug, a single, cold, clear thought formed in my mind. It was no longer about getting back home. It was about something else entirely. I looked up from the floor, my eyes hard. "Mavis," I said, my voice barely a whisper but filled with a new, terrifying certainty. "I'm going to crash a wedding." A few days later, I convinced Mavis's grandson, a quiet teenager with a beat-up truck, to drive me into town. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I gave him the last of the cash I had on me. We parked across the street from my house, our house. It looked exactly the same, but it felt like a stranger's home. We didn't have to wait long. The front door opened, and Russell and Delea walked out hand in hand. They were laughing about something. He leaned down and kissed her, a casual, intimate gesture that spoke of years of familiarity. It wasn't the kiss of two people finding comfort in grief. It was the kiss of a long-established couple. The sight of it turned my stomach. I knew then that I couldn't just storm in. I needed a plan, I needed allies, and I knew exactly who to call first. I had the grandson drop me off at a convenience store where I bought a cheap burner phone. My hands trembled as I dialed a number I knew by heart. It rang once, twice. On the third ring, she picked up. "Hello? Brenda. Don't hang up, it's Loretta." Silence. Then a sharp, annoyed voice. "This isn't funny." "Who is this?" I had to prove it was me. "When we were 16, I said, my voice cracking, "you helped me sneak out to see that awful punk band, the Misfits. You wore my denim jacket because your parents would have grounded you for life if they knew where you really were. We told them we were at a school movie night." More silence. And then a choked sob. "Oh my God, Loretta. How? Where are you?" "I can't tell you yet, Bren, but I need to know something, and I need you to be honest with me." I took a deep breath. "How long? How long were they together before I disappeared?" Brenda's sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line told me everything. "Loretta, I don't know for sure. There were rumors, whispers, but I never wanted to believe them." "How long, Brenda?" I insisted, my free hand clenching into a fist. She sighed, a sound heavy with guilt. "I saw them together at the Blue Room downtown. It was about 8 months before your accident." My heart stopped. 8 months. While I was planning our anniversary trip, my husband and my sister were sneaking around. "They didn't see me," Brenda continued, her voice rushed. "I wanted to tell you, Loretta, I swear I did. But I had no proof. I confronted Delea about it later, and she just laughed it off. She swore it was a one-time thing, a stupid mistake, and she begged me not to ruin your marriage over it." 8 months? The words echoed in my head. While I was trying to get our finances in order for a new home, while I was trying to start a family, they were together. The betrayal was so much deeper than I could have ever imagined. "Loretta, what are you going to do?" Brenda asked, her voice laced with fear. Through the windshield of the truck, I watched as Delia drove away from my house. She was driving my car, the one Russell had probably reported as sold, and she was wearing my favorite cashmere sweater, the one I thought I'd lost. A cold, hard resolve settled over me. I'm going to let them have their perfect wedding planning, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. Let them send out the invitations, pick the flowers, choose the cake. Let them think they've gotten away with everything. And then? Brenda whispered. And then, I said, I'm going to show up at that church, and I am going to give them exactly what they deserve. I hung up before she could say another word. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. Returning to Mavis's cabin felt different this time. It was no longer just a sanctuary. It had become my war room. I spent my nights at her kitchen table, making lists, trying to remember passwords, account numbers, anything I could use. Mavis would set a fresh cup of tea beside me, her eyes filled with concern. Be careful, dear, she warned one night. Revenge can consume you if you let it. I looked up from my notes, meeting her gaze. I'm not letting it consume me, Mavis, I told her. I'm letting it fuel me. There's a difference. And there was. Because to get the justice I needed, I required more information. Brenda's confession was a start, but I needed to know more about what had happened after I was gone. I needed to talk to someone on the inside. I needed to talk to Garrett. Garrett had been Russell's best friend since college, his best man at our wedding. He was a decent guy, but weak-willed, and I always sensed he had a bit of a guilty conscience. More importantly, he always had a soft spot for me. I knew I could use that. I had to change my appearance. Mavis helped me dye my hair a dark brown in her kitchen sink, the cheap box dye staining her porcelain. I bought a pair of non-prescription glasses with thick frames at a drugstore. I started dressing in baggy, forgettable clothes. It was a strange feeling, trying to become invisible in a town where I once knew everyone. I found Garrett at his usual spot, the corner booth at Jimmy's Bar and Grill, nursing a beer after work. My heart was hammering against my ribs as I slid into the booth across from him. Hello, Garrett. His beer froze halfway to his mouth. The color drained from his face as if he'd seen a ghost, which I suppose he had. Jesus Christ, he whispered, his eyes wide with disbelief. Loretta? Keep your voice down, I said, glancing around the bar. I need to talk to you. But they said you were dead. Yeah, not so much, I said, leaning forward. Tell me everything, Garrett. How long did you know? He set his beer down with a shaking hand. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I swear, Loretta, I didn't know before the accident, not for sure, but you knew after, I pressed. When they got together so quickly. He rubbed his face, looking exhausted. Look, Russell told me there had been something going on, but he said it was over. He told me that about a year before you disappeared. He said it was a mistake, that he ended it. He finally looked at me, his eyes pleading. I believed him. And after I was gone, it was like they didn't even try to hide it anymore, he admitted, his voice low. I confronted him once, told him to come clean, to respect your memory. But you never told anyone else, did you? I'm sorry, Loretta. I should have, he mumbled, looking down at his hands. A waitress approached, and I pulled my baseball cap lower, ordering a whiskey. Neat, I was going to need it. After she left, Garrett leaned in closer. There's more, he said, his voice barely audible. About your house, your money. My gut clenched. What about it, Russell? He used your life insurance payout to clear his gambling debts. The words hit me like a punch. Gambling debts? I never knew he had any. And now, Garrett continued, his voice full of disgust. He and Delia, they're using what's left to plan this ridiculous, over-the-top wedding. It's your money, Loretta. They're using your death to fund their new life together. The whiskey arrived. I downed it in one fiery gulp. The burn was a welcome distraction. Show me proof, I demanded. Garrett pulled out his phone. He showed me screenshots of bank statements he'd managed to get, text messages he'd been copied on, evidence of their betrayal laid bare in pixels and numbers. They were planning to start a real estate development company with the rest of my money. It was all there, the blatant, shameless theft of my life and my money. Mother? I asked, dreading the answer. Is she really okay with all of this? Garrett's expression said it all. Judith, she's been helping them plan the whole thing, says it's what you would have wanted, for them to be happy. The betrayal from my own mother felt like a physical blow. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. I had to get out of there. I turned to leave, my mind reeling from the financial betrayal, the sheer audacity of it all. But then Garrett grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "Wait," he said, his face pale. "Loretta, there's something else, something you need to know." I paused, a cold feeling creeping up my spine. "What?" "It's about the day you went hiking." My heart stopped. "What about it?" He swallowed hard, his eyes darting around the bar as if he was afraid of being overheard. "Russell, he knew about that trail. He knew how dangerous it was after a heavy rain. We talked about it a few weeks before, after a buddy of ours slipped and broke his ankle up there." The air in my lungs turned to ice. My memory flashed back to that morning. Russell, so cheerful, so insistent. "You should take the Carson Ridge Trail. The view is spectacular after the rain." "He's the one who suggested you go there that morning, isn't he?" Garrett's voice was barely a whisper, but the accusation hung in the air like a death sentence. The implications hit me like a wave of ice water. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't just theft. Had my accident been arranged? The thought was so monstrous, so unthinkable, that for a moment I couldn't breathe. "Do you have proof of that too?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Garrett nodded slowly, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and grim certainty. "He texted me that morning, asking if I thought the trail would be slick enough. I didn't think anything of it at the time. I thought he was just concerned. But then later Delia texted him, and I think he accidentally copied me on the thread." My whole body went rigid. "Send them to me," I said, my voice like steel. I scribbled the number from my burner phone on a napkin and pushed it across the table. "Send me everything you have. Every screenshot, every statement, everything." "Loretta, what are you going to do with it all?" he asked, his face a mask of worry. I managed to smile, but I knew there was no warmth in it. "I'm going to give them the wedding day they deserve." I walked out of the bar and into the drizzling rain. My mind was racing, trying to process the enormity of what I had just learned. If Russell had deliberately sent me to that trail, knowing how treacherous it was, this was attempted murder. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A new message. It was from Garrett. He had already sent the files. I ducked under the awning of a closed shop, my hands shaking as I opened the first image. It was a screenshot of a text message thread. My blood ran cold as I read the words. "Russell, trail should be slick enough after the rain. Make sure she goes alone. Delia, are you sure about this? Russell, it's the only way we can be together. Trust me." I had to lean against the cold brick wall for support. My knees felt weak. They hadn't just betrayed me. They hadn't just stolen from me. They had tried to kill me, all for money, also they could be together without judgment. I closed the messages, a terrifying calm washing over my shock. The old Loretta, the trusting, naive wife and sister, had truly died on that mountain. The woman standing in the rain, staring at the proof of her own attempted murder, was someone entirely new, and she was about to learn that karma, when it finally arrives, has perfect, deadly aim. The next step was to bring my allies together. I arranged a meeting with Brenda at a quiet coffee shop 2 towns over, a place where no one would recognize me. When she saw me, she burst into tears, hugging me so tight I could barely breathe. "I can't believe it's really you," she sobbed. "I thought I was going crazy when you called." "I'm sorry for disappearing on you, Bren," I said, guiding her to a corner booth. "But I needed time to gather evidence." I pulled up my phone and showed her the text messages from Garrett. Her hand flew to her mouth as she read them. "Oh my God," she whispered, her eyes wide with horror. "Loretta, they planned it, the whole thing." "It looks that way," I said, my voice grim. "But I need more." Before she could respond, a man in a dark suit approached our table. My heart jumped into my throat until I saw Brenda relax slightly. "Loretta," she said, her voice steady. "This is Detective Miller. He's been investigating your case." I tensed up immediately. "Brenda, you didn't—" "It's okay," Detective Miller said, his voice calm and reassuring as he slid into the booth. "Your secret's safe. Frankly, Miss Hayes, I've been suspicious of your husband and sister from the start. The timeline of their engagement, the quick insurance payout, it never sat right with me. But I couldn't prove anything." He pulled out a small recorder. "And now I'd like to hear your story." So I told them everything. The hike, the fall, Mavis, discovering the engagement. When I got to the part about my mother, Judith, helping them, Brenda reached for my hand. "There's something else you should know," she said quietly. "About your mother? That she's supporting them?" I already know. No, it's worse, Brenda said, glancing at the detective, who nodded. She's been helping them sell off your things, your jewelry, your art collection, everything you inherited from Grandma Rose. The coffee cup in my hand cracked under the pressure of my grip. My own mother. Detective Miller made some notes. Legally, without a death certificate, those sales could be considered theft, he explained. We've been looking into Russell's finances for a while, insurance fraud at the very least, and now with this attempted murder. He then pulled some documents from his briefcase and laid them on the table. We also found something interesting when we dug a little deeper. Your grandmother's will. My head snapped up. What about it? The version filed with the court isn't the original, he said gravely. We found the real one in your grandmother's safety deposit box. He slid both documents across the table. The difference was stark. The real one left her entire estate, a considerable inheritance, to me. The filed version, the forgery, split everything between me and Delia. How? I whispered, staring at my mother's signature on the fraudulent document. Your mother had power of attorney after your grandmother's stroke, Miller explained. She made the switch before filing. So, my own mother had stolen my inheritance, and now she was helping my husband and sister sell off assets they technically didn't own. It was a conspiracy, a web of lies and greed spun by the three people I should have been able to trust most in the world. Just then, Brenda's phone buzzed. Her face went pale as she looked at it. You need to see this, she said, her voice trembling. It was a social media post from Delia, a picture of her in a bridal shop, wearing a wedding dress. My grandmother's vintage wedding dress, the one that was supposed to be mine. The caption read, "Final dress fitting. Can't wait to honor my sister's memory by wearing her dream dress on my special day. Wedding countdown unlove wins." And as if that wasn't enough, Brenda added one last devastating blow. I overheard her talking to your mother yesterday. She said she's planning to announce at the wedding that they're expecting. The room spun. What? She's 3 months pregnant. 3 months. The math was simple and brutal. They conceived their child while I was fighting for my life in a stranger's cabin, while they were planning their wedding with my money. I want to destroy them, I said, my voice quiet but shaking with rage. Not just legally, I want them to feel what I felt. Detective Miller looked at me, a grim understanding in his eyes. We have enough for arrests now, he said, but if you want maximum impact, the wedding. I finished. Let them have their perfect day, then take everything. It was a huge risk, but it was the only way to get the justice I truly wanted. That evening, I let myself into my childhood home using a key I knew was hidden under a loose brick by the back door. The house felt alien. Photos of Russell and Delia were everywhere, replacing the ones that used to have me in them. I walked into the darkened kitchen and sat at the table, waiting. An hour later, the door opened, and my mother, Judith, came in, humming to herself. She flipped on the light switch, and the humming stopped abruptly. She clutched her chest, her purse dropping to the floor with a thud. Jesus, she gasped. Loretta, you can't keep doing that. Sit down, Mother, I said, my voice flat. We need to talk about Grandma Rose's will. Her face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. I slapped both versions of the will onto the kitchen table, the real one and the forgery. Want to explain this? She stared at the papers, her composure crumbling. Where did you get those? It doesn't matter where I got them. What matters is what happens next. I pushed the real will toward her. You're going to help me, or I'm taking this to the district attorney. You will go to prison. You wouldn't, she stammered. I'm your mother, and Delia is my sister. I shot back. That didn't stop either of you from trying to kill me and steal my life. I didn't know about that, she cried, collapsing into a chair. I swear, Loretta, I only found out after they said you were dead. Russell was so broken up, and Delia was there for him. They were in love. I thought it was fate. I laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. Fate? They planned my death, Mother, and you helped them profit from it. You helped them plan their wedding, helped them sell my things, all while knowing what they did. She started crying, real heaving sobs, but I felt nothing, no sympathy, no pity. Here's what's going to happen, I continued, my voice like ice. You're going to keep planning this wedding. You're going to make it perfect. Spare no expense. It's my money paying for it anyway, right? What? What are you going to do? She whispered through her tears. I'm going to give my dear sister the wedding she deserves, I said. The only question is, Which side will you be on when it all comes down? She stared at the two wills on the table, her mind clearly racing, weighing her options. Her survival instinct finally won out over any twisted sense of loyalty she had to Delia. She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears, her eyes full of fear. What do you need me to do? First, I said, get me a copy of every financial document you have related to them in this wedding. Every vendor contract, every receipt. Then I want to know every single detail, the guest list, the seating chart, the schedule, every speech that's planned. And if I do all this, she asked, her voice trembling, then maybe, just maybe, I said, standing up to leave, you won't spend your retirement in a prison cell. As I walked out the back door and into the cool night air, I heard her pick up the phone. Her voice, miraculously composed, floated through the open window. Delia, darling, it's Mom. I've had the most wonderful idea for your wedding entrance. The trap was set. All the pieces were falling into place. The wedding rehearsal was in full swing when I slipped into the church's choir loft, Brenda right behind me. From our hidden vantage point, I watched the grotesque parody of my life unfold below. No, no, Delia, darling, my mother called out, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. She was playing her part perfectly. You need to pause longer at the third pew. That's where the photographers will have the best angle. Delia, wearing a sundress that was already straining to conceal her growing belly, practiced her walk again. Russell stood at the altar, beaming at her. He looked at her with the same adoring expression he used to reserve for me. The sight of it made me sick. They seem nervous, Brenda whispered, handing me a pair of binoculars. Especially Delia. Good, I said, focusing the lenses on them. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Detective Miller, FBI team in position, all accounts flagged. Ready when you are. Down below, Delia was having what looked like a heated, whispered argument with my mother. I could just make out her words. I can't do this, Mom. It doesn't feel right. Wearing Loretta's dress. What if what? My mother hissed. Don't be ridiculous. Everything's perfect. Russell joined them, putting an arm around Delia. Babe, we talked about this. It's what Loretta would have wanted. I almost laughed out loud. Instead, I sent a text to Garrett. You're up, right on cue. Garrett burst through the main church doors, looking appropriately flustered. Russell, we have a problem. It's the permits for the new development. Russell's face darkened. Not now, man. The bank's threatening to pull our funding, Garrett insisted, playing his part beautifully. We need to deal with this today, or the whole thing could fall apart. Fine, Russell grumbled. He kissed Delia's cheek. I'll handle this. You finish up here. After they left, Delia sank into a pew, her head in her hands. My mother patted her shoulder awkwardly. I'll go get you some water, she said, hurrying away. It was the opening I'd been waiting for. Stay here, I whispered to Brenda. I slipped down the back stairs and into the main sanctuary, staying in the shadows of the large stone pillars. Delia was alone, muttering to herself. This is wrong. This is all wrong. Having second thoughts, sister dear? I said, my voice echoing slightly in the empty church. She whirled around, her eyes wide with terror. Who's there? Just your conscience, I said, staying hidden. Telling you what you already know. That karma's coming. Loretta? Her voice cracked. That's impossible, is it? Like it was impossible for you to sleep with my husband? To help plan my accident? No, you're dead. This isn't real. I stepped out from behind the pillar, letting a shaft of colored light from the stained glass windows fall across my face. Her face went ashen. She stumbled backward, making a sign of the cross. You're not real. You're not real. Oh, I'm very real, I said, taking a slow step toward her. And so is all the evidence of what you and Russell did. Every text, every secret meeting, every penny you stole. Please, she whispered, her hands flying to her stomach protectively. I'm sorry. We can fix this. Fix this? I laughed, a cold, empty sound. Like you fixed my brakes before suggesting that hiking trail? Her eyes widened in shock. That was a bluff, a detail I'd invented. But her reaction confirmed they'd considered other ways to get rid of me. That was Russell's idea, she sobbed. I tried to stop him. Those texts say otherwise, I said, moving closer until I was standing right in front of her. But don't worry, I'm not here to hurt you. I leaned in, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I'm here to promise you something. What? She whimpered. The perfect wedding day you deserve. I smiled, and she shrank back in terror. Sleep well, sister. I'll see you at the altar. I melted back into the shadows just as my mother returned with a glass of water. Delia was hyperventilating. Mom, I saw her. Loretta's alive. She was here. Don't be ridiculous, my mother said. But I could see her hands were shaking. You're just nervous. From the balcony, I watched my mother lead my hysterical, sobbing sister away. My phone buzzed again. It was Miller. Russell took the bait. He's trying to move money between accounts right now. Perfect. Let him dig his grave just a little bit deeper. The night before the wedding, I sat in Brenda's guest room. The air was thick with anticipation. On the bed lay my grandmother's jewelry box, one of the few things my mother had somehow forgotten to sell. Brenda came in with 2 glasses of wine. Everything's ready, she said, her voice a mixture of excitement and nerves. Miller has teams at every exit. Garrett planted the doctored financial documents in Russell's office for the FBI to find. Even your mother came through with the final seating chart changes. She hesitated, swirling the wine in her glass. Are you sure about this, Loretta? It's going to destroy them completely. I opened the jewelry box and pulled out my grandmother's sapphire ring, the one I was supposed to wear on my wedding day. They tried to kill me, Brenda, I said, my voice low and steady. They stole my life, my money, my future. Tomorrow they're going to know exactly how that feels. Just then my phone rang. The screen displayed Delia's name. We both stared at it. Answer it, Brenda urged. Find out what she wants. I put the phone on speaker. Hello, sister. Loretta. She slurred, her voice thick with alcohol and tears. I knew it was you in the church. I'm not crazy. Having some pre-wedding jitters? I asked coldly. Please. She started crying, a desperate, pathetic sound. Don't do this. Whatever you're planning for tomorrow, just don't. And why shouldn't I? Because I'm pregnant, she sobbed. Please, Loretta, think about your niece, or nephew. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. You mean the baby you conceived with my husband while I was supposedly dead? The baby you planned to raise on my stolen inheritance? I love him, Loretta. We never meant to hurt you. Really? Those text messages about the hiking trail suggest otherwise, I snapped. There was a moment of silence. Then she whispered, That was Russell's idea. He said it would look like an accident, that we could be together without anyone judging us. I was weak. I was stupid. But I've been paying for it every day. I see you everywhere, Loretta. In my dreams, in mirrors. I can't escape what we did. Good, I said, twisting my grandmother's ring on my finger. Then tomorrow should feel very familiar. I hung up as she started pleading again. She sounds terrified, Brenda said, watching me carefully. She should be, I replied, walking over to a garment bag hanging on the back of the door. I unzipped it, revealing my grandmother's original wedding dress. The real one. Brenda gasped. How did you get that? Mavis's granddaughter works at the dry cleaners, I explained, running my hand over the vintage lace. She switched them last week. Delia will find out tomorrow morning that her altered version is gone, and this one won't fit. My phone buzzed. A text from Miller. Russell just tried to empty all accounts. Everything's frozen. He's panicking. Another text, this time from Garrett. He's drinking heavily at Jimmy's, talking about running. Should we stop him? Brenda asked. No, I said with a grim smile. Let him show up hungover. It'll make everything so much better. A knock at the door made us both jump. It was my mother, Judith, looking haunted. Delia is hysterical, she said, entering without an invitation. She's threatening to call off the wedding. And that would be bad, I said coldly, because if she does, we lose our chance. The FBI needs them to attempt to access those frozen accounts tomorrow to prove intent. I looked my mother dead in the eye. Don't worry, she'll show up. Her pride won't let her do anything else. She stared at me, her face a mess of conflicting emotions. Loretta, please, she begged. Show some mercy. Mercy? I opened my phone and played the recording of Russell and Delia planning my accident that Garrett had provided. Did they show me mercy? She listened, her face growing paler with each word. When it finished, she sank heavily onto the bed. I didn't know, she whispered. I never thought. Now you do, I said, and tomorrow, so will everyone else. I walked her to the door. Be at the church at 10 a.m. Wear something festive. After all, it's your daughter's wedding day. After she left, I turned off my phone. The stage was set. I needed to be well rested for my sister's big day. The church bells struck noon, and chaos was erupting in the bridal suite. I watched through a tiny crack in the door I'd propped open, my heart a steady, rhythmic drum. "This isn't my dress!" Delea's scream echoed down the marble halls. She was holding up the original, unaltered wedding dress, just as I'd planned. "But that's impossible," my mother said, feigning confusion perfectly. "We had it altered last week." "I can't wear this. It won't even go over my hips. I'm pregnant, for God's sake," she shrieked. Several guests who were passing by stopped and stared, their eyes wide. Her pregnancy wasn't supposed to be public knowledge yet, the first crack in their perfect facade. The wedding coordinator rushed past me, looking frantic. 15 minutes until the ceremony, she hissed into her headset. I slipped away from the door and made my way to my position behind the massive church organ, concealed by shadows and velvet curtains. The guests began to file in, a sea of pastel dresses and dark suits, all murmuring about the commotion they'd heard. I saw Russell at the altar, swaying slightly. He was pale and sweaty, clearly hungover. Garrett was beside him, playing the role of the supportive best man while gripping his arm to keep him steady. The music started. The great wooden doors at the back of the church opened. Despite everything, the guests stood and turned, a conditioned response. Delea began her walk down the aisle. She was wearing a hastily found backup dress, a simple white sheath that did nothing to hide her condition. She wasn't a radiant bride. She looked terrified, her eyes darting around the church as if she expected to see a ghost in every corner. She reached the altar. The priest began his speech, his voice droning on about love, honor, and holy matrimony. I caught my mother's eye from my hiding spot. She gave me an almost imperceptible nod. The time had come. "If anyone has reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony," the priest intoned, his voice echoing in the sudden silence, "let them speak now or forever hold their peace." The silence stretched on for a heartbeat. 2, 3. Then I stepped out from behind the organ. My heels clicked on the marble floor, the sound sharp and loud in the silent church. Every head turned toward me. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Russell stumbled backward, his face slack with disbelief. Delea dropped her bouquet, the flowers scattering across the floor. I walked slowly down the center aisle, a faint smile on my lips. I have a few reasons. If you are still listening to this, and I truly hope you are, please help me out by liking this video and commenting with the number 1 down below. It lets me know that you've given me a like, and it tells me that you're here with me on this journey. Your support is a tremendous encouragement, cheering me on. Please comment with the number 1, and then let me tell you what happened next. The church erupted in a cacophony of whispers and gasps. I continued my slow, deliberate walk down the aisle, enjoying the shock on every single face. "Sorry I'm late," I said, my voice clear and steady, carrying easily through the stunned silence. "Traffic was murder." This isn't possible," Russell slurred, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You're dead. We made sure—" He caught himself, but it was too late. His words, his accidental confession, hung in the air, damning him completely. "You made sure?" I asked, raising an eyebrow as I reached the front of the church. "Like you made sure the hiking trail was slick after the rain? Like you made sure I went alone?" "Loretta, please," Delea whispered, sinking to her knees, her face a mess of tears and runny mascara. "Not here." "Why not here, Delea?" I asked, my voice rising. "It's my church, too. My grandmother's dress you tried to wear. My money that's paying for all of this." I gestured around at the extravagant floral arrangements and the stunned guests. "And my husband," I said, turning to lock eyes with Russell, "that you're trying to marry." As if on cue, the main doors of the church swung open again. Detective Miller entered, followed by 2 uniformed officers and 2 FBI agents in dark suits. "Speaking of money," I continued, my voice ringing with authority, "Russell, would you like to explain to everyone how you've been spending my life insurance payout, or how you paid off your gambling debts? Or should we just ask the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit?" Panic flashed in Russell's eyes. He bolted, making a run for the side door. But the agents were faster. They tackled him before he made it halfway, cuffing him as he struggled and cursed. "And Delea," I said, turning to my sister, who was now just a crumpled heap on the floor. "Should we tell everyone about the text messages? About how you helped plan my accident?" "I didn't. I never meant to," she sobbed. "Show them," I called out to Brenda, who was up in the choir loft. The large video screen that had been set up to display wedding photos flickered to life. But instead of smiling pictures of the happy couple, their own words appeared in giant, damning text. Trail should be slick enough. Make sure she goes alone. Are you sure about this? It's the only way we can be together. Trust me. The crowd gasped as they read. The whispers turned into shouts of outrage. My mother, seeing her world collapsing, stood up. Loretta, that's enough. Enough? I turned to her. Like how you forged Grandma's will to steal my inheritance was enough? Don't worry, Mother. The FBI has some questions for you, too. 2 officers moved toward her, and she fainted dead away into the pew. Delia vomited into a decorative plant. The whole scene was a beautiful disaster. You see, I addressed the stunned guests, my voice filled with the righteous fury I had held back for so long. This was supposed to be my happy ending, my husband, my house, my family. But they tried to kill me for it instead. The agents were now leading a handcuffed Russell back down the aisle. "We can explain," he shouted desperately. "Oh, you'll have plenty of time to explain," I said calmly. To the FBI, to the DA, to a jury. I walked over to the collection plate by the door where the agents were holding him. I pulled my grandmother's sapphire ring from my finger. "Remember how you always said I was too trusting, too naive?" I looked him straight in the eye. Turns out I learned from the best about betrayal. I dropped the ring into the brass plate. It landed with a soft clink. "Consider it a donation," I said to the priest, who was staring, dumbfounded. "God knows you both need the prayers." As they were led away, a crying, handcuffed Delia and a struggling, swearing Russell, Brenda appeared at my side. "Was it worth it?" she asked softly. I watched as the police cars pulled away, their sirens beginning to wail. I saw the reporters who had been tipped off rushing in, their cameras flashing. I looked at the toppled wedding cake, a perfect metaphor for the day. "They tried to steal my life," I said, straightening my jacket. "I'd say this was exactly what they deserved." The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters as Russell and Delia were let out in handcuffs after their sentencing a few months later. I watched from across the street, sipping coffee with Brenda and Detective Miller. 15 years each, Miller said, taking a sip of his own coffee, plus full restitution of all stolen assets. The DA said it was one of the easiest convictions she's ever gotten, especially after Russell tried to blame everything on Delia during the trial. I watched my sister stumble on the steps. Her baby bump was more visible now, though prison uniforms weren't particularly flattering. She was set to be transferred to a different facility with a maternity ward. The thought of that baby, my niece or nephew, being born in prison was a complicated one. I tried not to think about it too much. "What about my mother?" I asked. "House arrest and supervised probation, given her age and failing health." Miller checked his notes. "She had to sell her house to pay back the estate she defrauded. Your full inheritance has been restored." He handed me an envelope. "The FBI finished processing your accounts. That's everything they stole, plus interest and civil penalties." The number inside made me blink. I was a wealthy woman, but the money felt secondary. Just then, Garrett jogged up to our table. He had testified against Russell and was now trying to rebuild his own life. "You need to see this," he said, handing me his phone. My mother, looking frail and old, was giving a televised interview from her living room. "I failed both my daughters," she said, her voice weak. "I chose the wrong side, believed the wrong stories. If Loretta never forgives me, I'll understand." "Turn it off," I said, handing the phone back. I'd heard enough apologies. "Have you heard from Delia?" Brenda asked gently. "Just letters saying she's sorry over and over. She asked to see me." "And?" "No," I said firmly, watching the last police car pull away. "She lost that right when she helped plan my murder. Some things don't deserve forgiveness." I stood up, feeling a sudden restlessness. The anger that had fueled me for months had cooled, leaving a strange kind of emptiness in its place. "I'm tired," I admitted, "tired of being angry." "Then stop," Brenda said, squeezing my hand. "You got your life back, Loretta. Your money, your freedom. Don't let them take up any more space in your head." My phone buzzed. It was a message from Mavis, the woman who had saved me. "Cabin's always open if you need some peace." Peace? What a concept. Suddenly, I knew exactly what I needed to do. "I bought a ticket," I said, a real smile forming on my face for the first time in a long time. "To where?" Brenda asked. "New Zealand. That hiking trip I always wanted to take." It felt fitting to start over in a place known for its beautiful, treacherous trails, to reclaim the very thing they had tried to use to destroy me. "Are you running away?" Garrett asked. "No," I said, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "I'm moving forward. They'll be in prison. My mother will live out her days under house arrest. The money's back where it belongs." It was time to write my own story now, one without revenge in every chapter. I looked down at my hand. I had retrieved my grandmother's sapphire ring from the church collection plate. It was never about the money or the ring itself. It was about the truth, and now the truth was out. I slipped the ring on my finger. It felt right. As I walked away from the courthouse, leaving my friends and the ghosts of my past behind, I felt a sense of profound freedom. Ahead of me lay mountains to climb, trails to explore, and a life reclaimed. A life I would live on my own terms. This time, no one would write my ending but me.